He was not German. Is the point.
No. But the terror hit all sorts of nationalities.
That's my point.
He escaped and came to this country, and the only orchestra that would hire him was the Cleveland Orchestra, and it was a nothing, just a little regional industrial city orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
But there were some people there that had some dreams, and they connected, and they bit by bit built that orchestra into truly a world-class orchestra. It still is one of the great orchestras in the world.
Yeah.
We're live, by the way.
What? Pardon?
We're live.
We are?
Yeah, finish the story.
Yeah, I like the story. So.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's why I make sure you say it.
This city, Austin, has a professional orchestra, but it only rehearses 4 days, actually 4 nights, because everybody works days, or most people do.
Mm-hmm.
They rehearse 4 nights before a concert weekend, and they do 8 of them a year. And so there is not a continuum of week in, week out, living with the same people, making music,
mm-hmm.
and hearing each other and making what we call an ensemble.
Yeah.
Out of the totality of the various instrumentalists. But these people, they are not only top grade, they live together week in, week out, all year long.
Wow.
Except for the normal time off during the vacation time, which is pretty substantial.
Yeah.
And so it is an ensemble that they think together, they know how to breathe together, they know how to breathe music together. And so a conductor can do things with that kind of an orchestra, and it's also 20% larger.
Oh yeah.
25% larger, especially in the string section.
Mm-hmm.
And we have wonderful instrumentalists in our orchestra here in Austin,
mm-hmm.
but they have the top drawers in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a caliber of sound that comes as a result of that, especially with a good, wonderful director, which they have. That is just different than anything else in the world.
Yeah.
It's just totally different. They breathe together. All 100 people on the stage, just about 100, not quite. You can almost sense them breathing together when they do whatever they do and make a phrase and hit an attack and make a sound and make a gentle sound. I've heard some softest sounds I've ever heard in my life, but they're beautifully done.
Yeah.
It was a world-class experience to hear them the other night.
Excellent.
It really was last night.
Yeah.
Just a great experience. It brought back memories.
Fantastic.
There is an experience known as chamber music, where a small number of individual soloists will join together and make music together
mm-hmm.
as a quartet or a quintet or a trio or whatever. And there is a togetherness that 3, 4, 5 people together playing can do
mm-hmm.
that a big ensemble can't do so easily. And yet one of the things that George Sal brought to that orchestra back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, what he brought to that orchestra was the ability of a whole orchestra to be able to play like almost chamber music ensemble.
Wow.
And that's something that your great-grandfather taught me to listen for and to know. And we went to the Cleveland Orchestra concerts in those days together.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd come home, 35-mile-an-hour drive, which took most of an hour. We'd drive on the way home, we'd talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
He'd be so excited about, did you hear this and did you hear that? It was just a great experience.
Wow.
And so to be able to hear them again and hear that they haven't lost any of that.
Yeah.
If anything, they've gained more.
Yeah.
It was just such a gift, such a treat.
Is there any kind of like a characterization that exists still today that has carried like any kind of nuance or character that was present then that has carried through to how they are today?
How do you mean?
I don't know.
I can't quite follow what you mean.
Well, I'm not like. Is there there's subtle differences between orchestras? It seems to me, and if it would if there was something special about what Ken Sell did in those days, have any of those, I guess, characterizations that may help make them unique carried through to today that you can see?
Well, that's exactly my.
thread.
I didn't make the point well, but that's clearly the point that I couldn't help but pick up on in hearing them last night.
Okay.
They still breathed and lived and moved.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
And were creating like one person, like 4 people playing quartet.
Yeah.
100 people playing a piece of music, large scale piece of music.
Okay.
They're still doing it the same way. Yeah, that's a gift that Sal brought to them.
Excellent, and that's still distinctive today.
It's still there.
Yeah,
It's still there. And as a matter of fact, each conductor after that has obviously cherished that. Any conductor would.
Yeah.
That's a gift to have received when you start taking over an orchestra like that.
That's excellent. We stand on the shoulders of giants, huh?
Yep, exactly.
Excellent. All right. Well, it is March the 3rd, 2014, and this is our 3rd session, right? About discussing your early life.
Is it the 3rd? I think it is the 3rd.
3rd. Yeah, 3rd session discussing your early life.
Right.
And
of course, you remember everything that we talked about before, like I don't.
Every word, yeah. Let me see here. What do we have? You mentioned the bicycles in Houghton as being a specific memory that you have.
Well, my brother and I were 2 kids when we moved to Houghton. I think I was going into the 8th grade or 7th or 8th grade. I've forgotten I'm a little fuzzy on that sequence. I think 8th grade. And we, of course, like being normal boy type kids, we'd always wanted bikes.
Mm-hmm.
Always. And we had never had bikes, and finally here we are in a small town, 500 people in the town.
Mm-hmm.
500 students in a little college up on top of the hill. And that's all there was in the town. And so it was a small town. It had a county road or a state highway or a state road that went through town, and that was it. And it was just a town that you drove through on the way. There wasn't even a traffic signal in the town. But we've on our first Christmas there, we had bikes. My mother's sister in Wisconsin was married to a doctor, a veterinarian who had some connection with a family that owned a bicycle manufacturer up in Minnesota or Wisconsin, someplace. Mm-hmm. And so my father and mother got themselves some sort of a deal on a couple of bikes, and for Christmas we opened up the bikes. And of course they were the big balloon tire bikes, just normal 1-speed bikes, with a little tin tank in the middle of it, and about as old-fashioned nowadays as you can imagine. But boy, they were heaven for us. We had a great time.
What color were they?
I cannot remember.
Really?
I cannot remember. I really do not remember the color. But we gave those bikes a workout. We used them well for the next few years while we were in Houghton. Yeah, that was a treat. That was a special treat.
Yeah. Was it at all a shock moving from the big city to this relatively little town? I mean, I know you've been to the farm, but was it different suddenly finding yourself living in a small town?
Life was life. Our family was our life. Our mother and father, and somehow or other, so it was a small town. Yeah, it was a different kind of experience. I think it was probably rougher for my parents on that score than it was for my brother and me. We were in a little town, and so we just made new friends, and we had moved enough in New York, so we never were in one place terribly long, where we built lifetime friendships that we continued on for years and years and years, like some people do. And I think that's a wonderful thing to be able to have. But my brother and I never had that. So we were used to making friends, and then if we moved on, we'd make new friends. And so we went to the small town, made our friends. It was It was a small town place. There was one general store in the town.
Yeah.
And when I say it was a general store, it was an old-fashioned general store that had everything in it. I wish I had pictures of it. It was, I can see it in my mind. It was about as old-fashioned a country store. Pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
The nearest thing you can get around here maybe are these, what do you call it, general stores? What's their name? In Austin here. There is a country general store here in town that's a family that runs.
Not Callahan's.
Callahan's.
Yeah, Callahan's.
Yeah, Callahan's. That's about as close to it, but not as big.
Okay.
As Callahan's.
Yeah.
Not by any means as big. But they had clothes. They had shovels. They had tools. They had food, all the food you needed, and so forth. A butcher shop.
Mm-hmm.
And the owner was the butcher, and he was the mechanic, and he was everything else there.
Yeah.
Kronk. Alton Kronk. I remember was his name.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you have any kids that you were friends with or anything like that?
No, he was an older gentleman, and he had a son who was on the faculty in the music department at the college in that town, Houghton College. Yeah.
Very cool.
I remember that.
Let's see here. Got a lot of what kind of games did you play in Houghton versus in the city? Was there any like stickball or anything like that, or anything games you would have played in Houghton that you didn't play in New York, or vice versa?
No. Games were not a part of our life a lot. There was no such thing as stickball or baseball or softball or anything like that. It was 1941, which was still, for most people, it was still a time of coming out of the Depression. This town had obviously never been a rich town by any means, not at all. So we rode our bikes a lot. I remember we'd go everywhere on our bikes when we finally got them. I remember that once in a while, one of the new games at the time was Chinese checkers.
Okay.
And we used to play Chinese checkers a lot. But that went on for years, as a matter of fact, in our family, for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, I remember even your parents playing Chinese checkers with my parents and their grandparents. They sort of latched onto that game and never let it go.
Yeah.
Games were not a thing. We had a Boy Scout troop, and I think my brother, but also I certainly was part of the Boy Scout troop for a while in that little town. I forgot, became a Life Scouter, Star. I forgot what level I got to.
Mm-hmm.
Can't remember anymore.
Yeah. Did you say obviously we talked a lot about your father and his way of going about things. Did he just not see any time or reason or place for games? Is that why there wasn't really a whole lot of that going on?
Well, coming from a tyrannical father family himself,
mm-hmm.
It was not one of those things that families did. So we never had it in our family much. Really didn't. I suppose that probably contributed to the lack of it,
mm-hmm.
as much as anything. We did a lot of reading. I did a lot of reading. I was capable of devouring books.
Mm-hmm.
All sorts of adventure stories. I remember I'd read.
Yeah, it was actually you had mentioned something about your first book on Arctic exploration.
That was before we actually left New York City, but I remember one time I picked up a book, pretty thick book, about either Arctic or Antarctica, but I can't remember. I think it was the Arctic, about some captain who went, and it was quite an adventure that he managed to live through it and come through it, and then finally escape the ice and get rescued and finally come home. I remember that was one of the great adventure books of my childhood. I just thought that was one of the greatest reads I ever read.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my mother being impressed that I would even bother to read it. I don't know why. I was probably 7 or 8 at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But I tended to devour books and read all sorts of adventure stories like that.
What type of adventure most piqued your interest?
Exploration kind of adventure,
Mm-hmm.
mostly, which of course was pretty rudimentary in those days compared to what we think of nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have all the mechanization of it that we do have now. We didn't then. But African continent exploration. I remember some in the Andes, in the South American area. Sailing ship adventures.
Mm-hmm.
I thought those were great. Robinson Crusoe was a great story for me. I
Yeah.
loved it.